During his professional football career, Boomer Esiason passed for nearly 38,000 yards, 247 touchdowns, and led the Cincinnati Bengals to Super Bowl 23. But in 1993, as he was leaving the Bengals to play for the New York Jets, Boomer's son, Gunnar, was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis. At that moment, the CF community added one of the NFL's biggest playmakers in their fight against this deadly disease. And they have fought. Over the past 22 years, the Boomer Esiason Foundation has raised more than $115 million in its search for a cure. With the support of family, friends, and the members of the cystic fibrosis community, the Boomer Esiason Foundation has positively affected those with CF and their families through vital transplant grants and scholarships, financial support for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation's research for a cure, as well as educational videos and podcasts. Today, just as he was on the gridiron, Boomer Esiason continues to be a leader in the fight to end cystic fibrosis. It's this tireless commitment that's at the heart of the Heisman Humanitarian Award.
You know that song.
I do know that song.
They can sing all the words.
Yes.
And now, on behalf of my fellow trustees at the Heisman Trophy Trust, it's my honor and privilege to present the 2015 Heisman Humanitarian Award, along with a donation of $50,000 to his foundation, to Boomer the Humanitarian.
Thank you. Thank you. That's the Maryland fight song for those of you who do not know it. And yes, Maryland does play football. Yeah, we do. Yeah, Fear the Turtle is right. So I don't really know where to start other than to start by saying thank you to the Heisman Trust for recognizing our fight for cystic fibrosis. But before I do go any further, I just want to say happy birthday to Reese. You're 50. Marty wants to know who your plastic surgeon is. You look good at 50, Reese. It's very good. You know, it's been a long, strange trip that our family has been on. And it really started well before the birth of our son, Gunnar, because in 1989, I was at a dinner in Washington, D.C., much like this dinner, although that dinner went on for about 6 hours, and it was just dragging on. And I wanted to tell Derek Henry this story because I've been with Derek now the last 2 days incessantly. He's been on TV with me. He's been on radio with me. I'm taking pictures with him and his family. I feel like I'm going to be invited for Christmas dinner here because I'm spending so much time with Derek. But I was at a dinner like this, and I was getting ready to receive the Quarterback of the Year award through the NFL. And as I was sitting there and kind of almost falling asleep, a man came up and spoke that night. And it was a charity that was attached to the dinner. But as a 27-year-old NFL player who had no kids and really was living by the seat of his pants and having a great time, I really didn't realize what the whole dinner was about, that there was a charitable aspect to it. And I sat and I listened and I heard Frank DeFord speak about how he lost his daughter, Alex, to the disease of cystic fibrosis at the age of 6. And he wrote a book and there was a movie, and I remember my wife and I were crying. Our eyes were just couldn't stop crying hearing the story and how eloquently he spoke about the disease of cystic fibrosis. And I just thought, what a courageous man that he would do this in front of a room full of 1,000 people and bare his soul and put a light and a face on a disease that I had never heard of. So after that dinner, we went up and spoke with Frank. And I said, Frank, how can I get involved in the fight against cystic fibrosis? This was back in 1989. And he says, well, if you go back to Cincinnati as the Cincinnati Bengal quarterback and become a face of fundraising, golf tournaments, you know, we've all been invited to things like that, dinners like this. and help us raise money and awareness in Cincinnati. Lo and behold, Cincinnati has a great children's hospital there, and there's a very small cystic fibrosis center, but it's one of the best in the country. We could really use your help. So we got involved. And not only did we get involved, we got personally involved with the hospital, we got personally involved with a lot of patients, and the hardships that those patients went through and those families went through. And the interesting thing for us was that we were seeing kids die before their 10th birthday. And it was just an ugly death because cystic fibrosis affects the lungs. And you can't breathe well, and basically the lungs flood themselves with bacterial infections, and it's either a transplant or there's no chance for a future for these kids. And this was back in 1989. So we got very much involved, and I'll never forget, Cheryl was pregnant with Gunnar. And it was interesting because Gunnar was coined, he had a nickname in the womb as I did. My nickname was Boomer in the womb for the truth. And so Gunnar was named Sabrosa without publicity, because when you are a quarterback in a small city like Cincinnati, everybody wants to know what's going on. And I'll never forget, Gunnar was born April 6, 1991. It happened to be opening day of the Cincinnati Reds. And if anybody's ever been to Cincinnati on opening day, I mean, it is like a city holiday, and everybody buys into it. There's a huge parade and everything else. And lo and behold, Gunnar was born on that parade day, and nobody really knew that we had a baby boy. And it was great. It was just great. We brought him home. And then after about 6 months, he had some problems. And then through the 1992 season, we had him tested for cystic fibrosis. All the tests came back negative. And we were talking about it back then, thinking about cystic fibrosis. Why would he have cystic fibrosis? How would our son have CF? And then in 1993, I got traded to the Jets. And I'll never forget stepping on the field that first day. And the secretary for the head coach, Bruce Kozlik, came out and got me off the field and said, "Your wife's on the phone. There's an emergency." And before I could even take a snap in minicamp, I had to run in, and Cheryl said, "Get back to Cincinnati. Gunnar's in the hospital. He's in a breathing tent. They got all sorts of things hooked up to him and everything else." And I told Bruce Kozlik, "I got to leave." And he says, "Go. Family first. Don't worry about it." I got on a plane, landed, went right to Cincinnati Children's Hospital. And the first person that Cheryl and I saw was the CF nurse and the CF pulmonary doctor. And you can imagine what we thought at that very moment when we were told that our son Gunnar was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis. And anybody who has a special needs child can truly appreciate the pressure that you find yourself under. And here I am, a quarterback of the New York Jets, getting ready to restart my career. My wife and I are looking at each other, crying for hours. And we both made phone calls. She to her dad, me to my dad. She called her mom, her sisters, her brothers, everybody else. And then I called Frank DeFord. And I said, "Frank, are you sitting down?" He said, "Yes." I said, "I have some news to tell you." He said, "What's that?" He goes, I said, "My son Gunnar was just diagnosed with cystic fibrosis. What am I going to do?" And he was quiet, pregnant pause for about 35 to 40 seconds. And then he said, "You know what? You were chosen. You were chosen because we need somebody to put a face on this disease." And I don't ever want to say you owe it to anybody, Boomer, because this is a private time in your life, and you have to figure out how you want to battle this. But you have a platform that very few people in this country have. You are the quarterback of the New York Jets. You are living in New York, the media capital of the world. You can do something about this. And lo and behold, I said to Cheryl, "So much for Sabrosa, because forget that. He's not going to be Sabrosa anymore. He's going to be front and center." So we made the decision to put our son out there. And in 1993, in October, Gunnar was on my shoulders on the cover of Sports Illustrated. It was called A Quarterback Crusade. Now, to enlist folks to help us fight this crusade, the first person I called and asked for was this man's teammate right here. His name is Dave Remington. By the way, he was 5th in the Heisman voting in 1982. So you didn't do it by yourself, just so you know that. And he wanted me to make sure that you knew that, okay, Mike? So I asked Dave Remington, two-time Outland Trophy Award winner, if he wouldn't mind coming back. He was overseas and he was studying international studies. He had retired from the NFL. If he wouldn't come back and be the president of a foundation that I wanted to start. And I had already made a grant gift to Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and he had to help me fundraise. And I'm happy to say to this very day, he's still with me. Because as you know, every person needs somebody around them to make sure that they are the eyes, the one that keeps you in check, the one that makes sure that you know exactly what's going on. So Dave and I set off on a journey in 1993. And at that time, the average age or medium lifespan for a cystic fibrosis child was I think about 16, meaning that, Gunnar was not going to make it through high school. And I was like, I don't want to hear this. This is not going to be the case with Gunnar. Now, at home, a whole different dynamic is taking place because there has to be somebody that is going to be there every step of the way that's going to make sure Gunnar is the one that's going to be getting the proper care while Dad is out there trying to get the word out to help raise money and put a name on this disease and a face on this disease. And that's my wife, Cheryl, Gunnar's mom, who is by far the most important person in that young man's life. So, Cheryl, thank you very much. You'll know that's the second standing ovation she's ever received. The first was on the day that the Gunnar Esiason Cystic Fibrosis and Pediatric Center was dedicated in Gunnar's honor in Cincinnati back in 1994. And she gave a speech, and I told her, look, you're going to have to say something. So she went into the bathroom, sat up with the toilet seat down and everything else, and wrote a little note to herself. So when she got up behind the microphone, she basically said, children like Gunnar are not cursed by God. They are chosen, and they are chosen to inspire us. And all I could tell you, some 22 years later, Gunnar Esiason has been my inspiration. So Gunnar is 24 years old now. I'll never forget when he came to me and he said, Dad, I don't want to go to Maryland. I said, okay, where do you want to go? He goes, I want to go where Doug Flutie went to college. I said, really? Really? You're going to make me walk past the Doug Flutie statue for 4 straight years at those football games? And he said, yes, Dad. And I said, okay, I'll deal with it. And then, of course, my daughter had to go there, so I had another year of looking at you. But in all honesty, it's been a wild ride, and this ride is far from over. We've raised hundreds of millions of dollars in our fight all across the country, not just our foundation, but collectively as CF parents, to give our kids a great opportunity. So when Gunnar was diagnosed, the median age was 16. That was 1993. Here we are in 2015. The median age is now almost up to 40. And what was once a pipe dream about a CF patient becoming a parent themselves is no longer that. Double lung transplants are more normal and more natural now than ever before and will continue to get better if we can't cure the disease. And all I pray and hope for Gunnar to understand truly what it means to be a father to somebody who has truly grown up to be almost as perfect as I could ever ask for. So Gunnar, I love you. This honor is in your honor, I should say. This award is in your honor. You're the pride of my life, man. I love you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.